So imagine, right, that you are holding your family together for years while your husband is off fighting this brutal, endless war.
Yeah, which is a nightmare on its own.
Exactly. You manage the finances, you raise the kids, you deal with that crushing day-to-day
Right,
anxiety.
that every knock at the door might be the messenger saying he's dead.
Yeah, it's just this suffocating weight. But then finally the war ends. He comes home
The
victorious.
ultimate relief, you would think.
You would think. But he walks through the front door holding the hand of a much younger woman,
Oh, wow, just right out in the open.
right in the open, his new lover. And he just expects you to accept it, to live in the exact same house with her while your entire life basically crumbles around you.
I mean, it is an agonizing, just suffocating scenario. It feels like something out of, I don't know, a modern psychological thriller.
Yeah, or like a deeply traumatic reality TV show or a prestige HBO series.
Totally.
But today we aren't talking about modern media at all. We are talking about a 2,500-year-old masterpiece.
Which is kind of mind-blowing when you think about how fresh the psychology feels.
It really is. Specifically, we're looking at an ancient Greek tragedy written by Sophocles. It's called Trachiniae, or The Women of Trachis.
Yeah, and we are diving headfirst into a world of, you know, demigods, mythical beasts, poisoned robes.
Which, I mean, let's be honest, can sound incredibly alien to a modern listener.
Oh, completely. It sounds like fantasy. But Sophocles uses that mythic veneer to explore the most raw, agonizing realities of human brokenness.
Right. Jealousy, despair, all of it. And that brings us to the core mission of our deep dive today.
Yeah, we really want to make this practical.
Exactly. We are speaking directly to you, the learner. You're someone who wants to look past the sort of dusty surface of ancient literature.
We aren't just doing history trivia here.
No, not at all. We are going to explore this heartbreaking 5th century BCE play about flawed heroes and inescapable fate. But here is the critical pivot.
The really fascinating part.
Right. We are digging into this material to uncover how its unflinching depiction of human suffering actually sharpens our appreciation for the gospel.
Yeah, it's such an unexpected connection.
It is. We want to see how this incredibly dark pagan play can unexpectedly deepen a Christian's faith, inspire a greater love for Christ, and challenge us in how we live today.
Because, I mean, what's fascinating here is that Sophocles brilliantly diagnoses a terminal human disease.
Okay, unpack that a little. What disease?
Well, our limitations, our destructive passions,
Yeah.
and our terrifying habit of realizing the truth only when it's way too late to fix it.
Oh, man.
He
Yeah.
diagnoses the disease perfectly, but his worldview offers absolutely no cure.
Right. There's no hope in it. The play is basically a mirror showing us our own fatal flaws.
Exactly.
But before we can understand how this points us to the hope of the gospel, we kind of have to understand the specific world that created this mirror in the first place.
Yeah, we really need to set the stage.
So we're talking about Athens, roughly 450 to 430 BCE, the so-called Golden Age.
Right. And it was a period of just unprecedented cultural and military dominance.
Like, they were the superpower of the Mediterranean.
Absolutely. So to really grasp the impact of Trachiniae, you have to picture the environment where it was first performed.
Which was the city Dionysia, right?
Yes, the city Dionysia. And this was not, a quiet, polite evening at the local theater.
Not like going to see a play on Broadway today.
Not even close. This was a massive, multi-day civic and religious festival dedicated to the god Dionysus.
Okay, so just paint the picture for us. What does this look like? What does it sound like? Or even smell like for a regular Athenian citizen walking into that space?
Okay, so imagine a massive open-air amphitheater. It's carved right into the southern slope of the Acropolis.
Wow, so right in the heart of the city.
Exactly. And you have upwards of 14,000 male citizens crammed onto these wooden benches.
14,000? That's like a modern sports arena.
Right, and the air is thick, like really thick with the smell of sacrificial roasted meat.
Because it's a religious event.
Yeah, meat and incense from the altars. And before the plays even begin, there are these huge parades.
Parades of what?
Well, parades of tribute from conquered states.
Yeah.
So they are literally showing off all the wealth they've extracted from their empire.
Just flexing on everyone.
Total imperial flexing. And then war orphans are paraded out.
Wait, war orphans? Like kids?
Well, young men. These are the sons of men who died fighting for Athens. They are paraded around in full hoplite armor, fully funded by the state.
Oh, wow. That's heavy.
It is. It's an overwhelming, sensory-rich display of Athenian imperial power, radical democracy, and frankly, military machismo.
Yeah, because they had just beaten back the Persian Empire not long before this.
Exactly. They controlled the seas. They honestly felt invincible.
Okay, so stop right there because I have to push back on this.
Sure.
You have 14,000 battle-hardened Greek men, highly politicized, flush with the arrogance of an empire, sitting in this massive amphitheater.
Yeah.
And Sophocles, who is, actively competing for a prize here, chooses to present them with a play about a lonely housewife having a domestic crisis in some place called Trachis.
It does sound crazy on paper.
I mean, would a crowd of 14,000 powerful men really care about the domestic anxiety of a woman waiting at home? It seems like a terrible miscalculation for that specific audience.
It totally sounds like a miscalculation until you understand the deep structural anxiety of the Athenian Empire.
Okay, what kind of anxiety? They're rich and powerful.
They are, but the wealth and power of Athens were entirely dependent on its men constantly being away.
Oh, right. You can't run an empire from your couch.
Exactly. They were fighting in Egypt, in Cyprus, suppressing revolts in allied states. It was endless.
So they were basically always deployed.
Always deployed. And this meant the entire foundation of their society, what they call the oikos, the household, was under massive sustained pressure.
The oikos, so that's like the family unit, the estate, everything that actually sustained daily life.
Precisely. The men were off pursuing public glory, all that heroic stuff.
Yeah.
But the women were left behind to manage the oikos.
And that couldn't have been easy.
No, they were dealing with the strain of absence, the constant fear of losing their status if their husband died, and, this is key, the influx of foreign slaves and captives that the men sent back as plunder.
So Sophocles isn't ignoring the reality of these men at all.
Not at all. He is weaponizing it.
Wow.
He is using this ancient myth to hold up a mirror to the clash between their public, violent, heroic exploits and the quiet, devastating collateral damage happening in their own living rooms.
So when the main character, Deianira, steps onto the stage pacing the floor and agonizing about her absent husband, the man in the third row isn't bored.
No, he's gripped.
He's thinking about his own wife, his own household, and the underlying fragility of his own life.
Exactly. Sophocles is telling this imperial city, look, your aggressive heroism has a dark, undeniable shadow.
And that shadow is what we see unfold in the plot of Trachiniae. So let's walk through that plot, because the psychological tension here is just incredibly tight.
It really is.
Deianira is the wife of Heracles. Now, he's the ultimate Greek hero, the guy who strangles lions, kills monsters, does the 12 labors.
The quintessential macho hero.
Right. But the play doesn't open with him doing any of that. It opens with Deianira isolated in Trachis.
And Trachis isn't even her true home.
No. She's basically a refugee of her husband's chaotic life, and she's been waiting for him for 15 months.
15 months of absolute silence.
Yeah, I mean, no text messages, no letters, just nothing.
Her opening monologue is this absolute masterpiece of anxiety. She explicitly states that her life has been nothing but fear.
Just constant dread.
Every time Heracles leaves, she is terrified. And when news finally does arrive, it initially seems like this huge triumph.
Right, a messenger announces that Heracles is alive. He has sacked a city called Oechalia, and he is coming home victorious.
It's the classic hero's return.
Like Odysseus coming back to Ithaca to restore order. Everyone in the audience knows this trope.
That is exactly what they are conditioned to expect. The triumphant restoration of the household.
But Sophocles immediately subverts it, doesn't he?
He flips it completely. Heracles doesn't just send home gold or livestock. He sends ahead a procession of enslaved captive women.
And here is where the bottom just drops out for Deianira. She looks at these traumatized women and, she actually feels a deep empathy for them.
Which is amazing. She isn't a villain. She genuinely pities them.
She does. But then she discovers the horrific truth about one specific captive in the group.
Right, a beautiful young princess named Iole.
And what does Deianira find out about Iole and Heracles?
She learns that Heracles didn't sack the city of Oechalia for political reasons, or, because he was provoked by an enemy king, or for honorable glory.
None of the usual heroic excuses?
No. He systematically destroyed an entire city, murdered its king, and enslaved all its people for one reason.
Which was?
He was completely, utterly consumed by lust for Iole. He wanted to possess her, and when her father refused, Heracles literally burned the city to the ground.
It is just staggeringly brutal. I mean, we think of heroes as noble, but this is monstrous.
It is. And now he is shipping this young, traumatized woman back to his own house to live alongside his aging wife.
He's dropping a bomb on his own oikos.
A massive bomb.
And Deianira, who is just terrified of losing her husband, her status, and her entire reality, she remembers something she has kept hidden in a bronze jar for years.
The supposed love charm.
Right. And this requires us to delve into the mythic backstory, which is, honestly, incredibly dark.
Very dark. So years prior, when Deianira was a young bride, she was being ferried across this river, the river Avenus, by a centaur named Nessus.
And centaurs in Greek mythology, they aren't exactly noble creatures.
Right. They are largely wild, instinct-driven creatures.
Yeah.
They represent the chaotic, untamed forces of nature.
And mid-river, Nessus attempts to sexually assault Deianira.
Yes. It's a horrific moment.
And Heracles, who is standing on the riverbank, hears her scream and shoots the centaur with an arrow.
But we need to be very, very specific about this arrow.
Right. It's not just a sharp piece of wood.
No. Heracles had previously defeated the Hydra of Lerna.
That's the monster with the multiple snake heads, right?
Exactly. A massive toxic serpent. And after he killed it, he dipped his arrows in its venom.
And this venom is bad news.
It is highly caustic, incredibly toxic, and eternally lethal. It destroys anything it touches.
So he shoots Nessus with this hydrovenom arrow.
Yes, and as Nessus is dying on the riverbank, bleeding out from this poisoned arrow, he calls out to Deianira.
And he offers her this horrific gift.
Right, he tells her to gather the clotted blood from his wound blood that is now deeply mixed with the hydrovenom and keep it hidden in the dark.
Which just sounds like a terrible idea from the start. Why would she do that?
Because he lies to her. He promises that if she ever smears this substance on a garment for Heracles, it will act as this infallible love charm.
Oh, wow.
He promises it will bind Heracles' heart to her forever, that he will never, ever look at another woman again.
And in her absolute desperation, staring at the young, beautiful Iole sitting right there in her courtyard, Deianira decides to use it.
She feels she has no other choice.
She takes a beautifully woven robe, and this is a piece of clothing she likely made herself, which, is the ultimate symbol of a wife's devotion in the ancient world.
Yes, weaving was the core duty of the Greek wife.
Right. And she smears it with this centaur's toxic blood. She packs it in a box, seals it up, and sends it to Heracles as a homecoming gift.
And she tells him to wear it for his victory sacrifices to the gods.
It is the ultimate tragic irony. I mean, she believes she is using the magic of arrows of love to save her marriage.
But she is actually sending a biological weapon wrapped in a symbol of domestic care.
A biological weapon, that is exactly what it is. Because when Heracles puts the robe on to perform the holy sacrifice, the heat of the altar fire activates the dormant venom.
The text is incredibly graphic here.
Yeah, it says the robe clings to his skin like a sculptor's mold. The poison literally begins to boil his blood and melt his flesh from his bones.
It's pure body horror.
It is, and he is a demigod, so he cannot simply die.
Right, his divine heritage keeps him alive through the pain.
He is trapped in a state of continuous, unspeakable agony. He starts smashing things. He actually kills the innocent messenger who brought him the robe.
By throwing him off a cliff.
Yes, and then he demands to be carried back to Trachis so he can confront his wife.
And, when Deianira realizes the catastrophic mistake she has made, when she understands that she hasn't saved her husband but murdered him in the most agonizing way possible, she doesn't even try to explain herself.
She doesn't write a note or beg for forgiveness.
No. She walks into their marital bedroom, she makes the bed one last time, which is just a devastating detail, and she drives a sword through her own heart.
It is an incredibly devastating sequence. And what makes this so compelling is that Sophocles doesn't just use the plot to manipulate the audience's emotions, right?
No, he goes way deeper than that.
Yeah. He literally bakes the psychological tension into the grammar and the architecture of the play itself.
It's genius-level craftsmanship.
So let's look at how the story is built. The structural architecture of Trachiniae is famously billed as a diptych.
A diptych, yeah.
Now, diptych, that's like one of those ancient paintings with two hinged panels that fold together, right? You have two distinct pictures that make a whole.
Exactly. The play is split into two radically different, almost completely disconnected halves.
Like two different plays smashed together.
Sort of. The first two-thirds of the play focus entirely on Deianira. Heracles is completely absent.
Right.
And the tone is quiet, domestic, introspective. It's dominated by her dread and her attempts to process the changing reality of her household.
And then she dies off stage, the panel just hinges shut.
And the second panel opens.
Right. The final third of the play pivots violently. Heracles is brought on stage on a litter, screaming in absolute agony.
The tone shifts entirely. It goes from quiet, internal anxiety to raw, explosive, very public physical suffering.
Now, I have to be honest here. I hear diptych structure, and it sounds like an academic excuse for what modern critics would just call terrible pacing.
A lot of modern readers feel that way.
I mean, if I'm watching a movie and the main character, who I've spent an hour emotionally investing in, just abruptly dies off screen, and then the last 30 minutes is some different guy screaming, "I'm asking for a refund."
Right. It feels totally disjointed.
It does. Why pivot so hard? Why break the narrative backbone of his own play?
It's a very natural modern objection. But we have to realize that Sophocles isn't failing at conventional storytelling here.
He's doing it on purpose.
He is deliberately shattering convention to make a profound point.
Hmm.
The structural break forces the audience to physically experience the unbridgeable gulf between this husband and wife.
Oh, wow. Wait, they never actually speak to each other in the play, do they?
Never. They do not share a single moment on stage.
That's crazy.
The structure itself enacts their profound isolation from one another. Their worlds are so fundamentally different, her quiet domestic fear versus his loud public violence, that they cannot even exist in the same theatrical space.
Man, so the diptych is a physical manifestation of their broken marriage.
Exactly.
That shifts my perspective completely. He's structurally enforcing their alienation.
Yeah, the medium is the message.
But it gets even deeper than the macro structure, doesn't it? If you're listening to this and thinking, okay, structural analysis is one thing, but how deep does this go? Well, stick with us, because the very verb tenses Sophocles uses are designed to manipulate your brain.
This is where it gets really technical, but so fascinating.
Let's talk about systemic functional linguistics, and specifically Campbell's verbal aspect. Explain how a Greek verb tense can psychologically pull an audience by the collar.
Right, so this is one of the most brilliant technical layers of the play. In English, we primarily use verbs to indicate time, right? Past, present, or future.
Like, I ran, I run, I will run.
Exactly. Time is the main focus. But ancient Greek operates heavily on something called aspect.
Aspect, okay.
Aspect doesn't just tell you when an action happened. It tells you how the author wants you to perceive the action.
How I perceive it.
Yeah. Does the author want you to see the action from the inside as if it's unfolding right in front of you? Or from the outside as a completed whole?
Okay, I need a concrete analogy for this. How does my brain process the difference between those two viewpoints?
Okay, think of it like a parade.
A parade, sure.
If you are standing on the sidewalk watching the floats go by, you are right in the middle of the action. You see the details, you hear the marching band, you can feel the rumble of the drums.
I'm in it.
The event is ongoing and immediate. That is the imperfective aspect. It creates a sense of profound proximity and immersion.
Okay, and what about the other side?
Now imagine you are in a helicopter a mile above the city, looking down at the entire parade route from start to finish.
I can see the whole thing, but I don't hear the drums.
Right. You see the whole thing as a single completed event. You are detached from the noise and the immediacy. That is the perfective aspect, specifically what Greek calls the aorist tense.
Aorist.
It creates a sense of remoteness and distance.
So how does Sophocles weaponize the parade and the helicopter in this play?
Well, when Deianira is on stage in the first half of the play, speaking about her pain, her daily life, and her terrible anxiety about Iole, Sophocles heavily utilizes the imperfective aspect.
The parade aspect.
Yes. The grammar itself forces the audience down onto the sidewalk with her. When she says, "I have a hard and heavy life," the grammatical aspect makes the emotion feel immediate, ongoing, and intimately near.
You are right there in the room with her dread.
Exactly. You cannot escape her subjective reality.
He traps you in the present tense of her suffering.
Precisely. But, and here's the contrast, when characters in the play talk about the grand mythic past.
Like Heracles wrestling monsters.
Yeah, when they recount him wrestling the river god, or fighting the Hydra, or when they talk about the prophecies of Zeus, Sophocles switches entirely to perfective aorist verbs.
He puts the audience in the helicopter.
He puts you in the helicopter.
So he takes the gods, the monsters, and the grand destiny of the hero, and he grammatically pushes them a mile away.
He creates a huge emotional distance.
He makes them feel distant, cold, and totally detached from the immediate human pain on the ground.
Yes. And then it gets even more intense in the final horrific scenes.
When Heracles is on stage.
Yes. When Heracles is brought on stage, literally burning alive, the text shifts to the perfect aspect.
The perfect aspect. How is that different?
In Greek, the perfect aspect describes a past action with intense, ongoing, present consequences.
Oh, wow.
It creates a state of heightened, almost unbearable proximity. It makes his physical agony viscerally immediate. You aren't just watching him burn. Grammatically, you are forced to sit in the inescapable consequence of the poison.
It is cinematic manipulation happening purely through grammar.
It totally is.
He pulls you into an extreme close-up of Deianira's tears. He pans way, way out for the cold indifference of the gods, and then he shoves the camera right into the fiery explosion of Heracles' death.
You can't look away.
And because the audience is trapped in this grammatical proximity, they are forced to confront the most terrifying theme of the play.
The horror of late learning.
Late learning, let's dig into that.
Late learning is really the engine of the tragedy. It is the realization of truth only after the catastrophic choice has been locked in and cannot be reversed.
And what makes Deianira's late learning so painful is that she isn't acting out of malice.
Not at all.
If this were a simple morality play, she would be a wicked, scheming witch who wanted to kill her husband. But she's not.
No. Her core tragic flaw is simply ignorance. Ignorance fueled by a desperate possessive love.
Right.
The Greeks had a specific word for this. Eros.
Now, we often translate eros as romantic love, right?
We do. But to the ancient Greeks, eros was not a warm, fuzzy feeling. It was not a Valentine's Day card.
What was it then?
It was a terrifying external force. It was a disease. It was a madness inflicted by the gods that completely overrides human reason.
So when Deianira is staring at Iole, she isn't experiencing a mild twinge of jealousy.
No, she's being consumed by a psychological plague.
Wow.
She acts out of this eros to protect her household, but by trying to save it with the centaur's blood, she annihilates it. She learns too late that you cannot control eros.
It controls you.
Exactly.
And Heracles has his own profound blindness, doesn't he?
He absolutely does. He is the ultimate physical specimen. He is invulnerable to external monsters. He can crush a lion's skull with his bare hands.
Internally.
Emotionally, he is incredibly fragile. He lacks what the Greeks called sophrosyne.
Sophrosyne, meaning what?
Self-control, temperance, soundness of mind.
He's a walking contradiction, invincible to swords, but completely destroyed by his own appetites.
Exactly. When he is dying on stage, he actually laments this exact paradox. He screams that he survived dragons and giants, only to be brought down by a, quote, soft woman without manhood's strain.
He is utterly humiliated.
He is. But he is blind to the fact that it wasn't a woman who destroyed him.
It was his own uncontrolled lust for Aeole.
Right. He brought the gasoline into his own house, and Deianira just unwittingly provided the match.
Man, that is bleak. But the truly terrifying part of this late learning isn't just the human mistakes, is it? It's the role of the gods.
The gods make it so much worse.
Because hanging over all of this misery is a prophecy, the Oracle of Dodona. Let's look at the mechanics of this oracle because it reveals exactly how cruel this worldview really is.
It is doubly cruel.
What did the oracle actually say to Heracles?
So years ago, an oracle of Zeus predicted that after Heracles completed his final labor in Ocalia, he would find rest. He would be released from his toils.
Right, and if you are a guy who has spent his entire life fighting monsters, getting poisoned, sleeping in the dirt, you hear the word rest and you think retirement.
Naturally.
You think of a beach, a glass of wine, and peace. He interprets the divine promise completely through the lens of human hope.
But the gods are playing a horrific linguistic game with him.
How so?
The oracle was true, but not in the way a human would ever comprehend. The rest, Zeus meant, was the absolute permanence of death.
Because there are no more toils in the grave.
Exactly.
It's like signing a contract with a massive corporation. You read the bold print that says guaranteed freedom, you feel great about it, you sign on the dotted line.
And you think you're safe.
Right. And then, as the walls are physically closing in to crush you, you read the microscopic fine print written in a language you barely understand, and you realize freedom meant they were legally allowed to grind you into dust.
That is exactly it.
The fine print is written by Zeus, and it's lethal.
It is. The play is a brutal exploration of the moment you read the fine print.
Late learning.
Yes. Hylas, their son, Deianira, and Heracles, they all realize the truth of the centaur's poison, the truth of the arrows, and the true meaning of the oracle only after the robe is on the hero's back.
When the poison is already in the bloodstream.
The contract is executed, there's no undo button.
And what does that say about the universe? Where does this leave the audience? Because the play ends on such an incredibly bleak note.
The bleakest note possible.
Hylas is standing over his mother's suicide. He's watching his father beg to be burned alive to escape the pain. He looks up at the sky, and he delivers the final, crushing verdict of the play.
He says, "There is nothing here that is not Zeus."
Nothing here that is not Zeus.
It is the ultimate expression of cosmic fatalism.
Just totally crushing.
The Greek gods, as portrayed here by Sophocles, are entirely indifferent to human suffering. They are powerful, they demand absolute submission, but they are not good.
Right.
If they have a grand design, it is inscrutable, arbitrary, and completely lacking in grace. You are a pawn on a chessboard.
Yeah.
If you get sacrificed for a move you don't understand, well, too bad.
So let's stop and sit in that tension for a second.
Okay?
If that is the worldview, that we are trapped in the imperfective, present tense suffering of our own lives, making terrible choices in the dark and manipulated by distant, cruel gods, how did anyone survive that psychologically?
Honestly, it's a profound question.
Where is the escape hatch? Because that level of suffocating fatalism is unlivable.
It is unlivable. And that exact desperate need for an escape hatch is what makes the Hebrew scriptures so intensely radical when you place them side by side with Greek tragedy.
Okay, so we are shifting now to look at the Old Testament.
Yes, and we must be crystal clear about the history here right off the bat. Sophocles was not reading the Bible.
Right. He's writing in the 5th century BCE in Athens. He has no access to the Hebrew prophets. There is zero historical or literary cross-pollination happening here.
Not at all. What we are doing is a thematic comparison.
Okay.
We are putting two ancient, incredibly robust worldviews side by side to see how they answer the exact same human cry of pain. Both traditions grapple with suffering, flawed heroes, and the limits of human knowledge.
But their answers are galaxies apart.
Completely different universes.
Let's start with the ultimate biblical text on innocent suffering, the Book of Job.
The perfect comparison.
If Deianira is destroyed by a mistake she made out of love, and Heracles is struck down at the height of his power, Job is the Hebrew equivalent.
Absolutely.
He is a righteous man, wealthy, secure, and then suddenly, catastrophic loss annihilates his life. He loses his children, his wealth, his health, entirely unprovoked.
And just like the characters in Trachiniae, Job and his friends suffer from a massive case of late learning.
Right, because for nearly 40 chapters, Job and his friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, Zophar, they sit in the ashes trying to decipher the why.
And they're using completely flawed human logic to do it.
They're using this rigid theology of retribution, right? The idea that good things happen to good people, bad things happen to bad people.
Exactly. They try to force God into this recognizable, predictable box, but they are completely in the dark.
They have no idea about the cosmic scene in the heavenly throne room.
None. They're entirely limited by their human perspective, just like Deianira trying to understand the love charm.
So Job is sitting there demanding an audience, demanding that God explain the contract.
And God actually shows up.
He does. But wait, I have to challenge this comparison, because when Yahweh answers Job, it's not exactly a comforting pastoral visit.
Not at all.
God speaks out of a literal whirlwind. He's terrifying. He aggressively interrogates Job for chapters, saying things like, "Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Can you pull in the Leviathan with a fishhook?"
It's intense.
God is flexing this massive cosmic muscle. So how is that actually any better or different than Zeus playing cruel linguistic games with Heracles? Isn't Job's God just as terrifying as Sophocles' Zeus?
It is a critical question to ask. The terror in Job is real, absolutely. But the nature of the power is fundamentally different.
Okay, how so?
Zeus's power in the Greek play is arbitrary, deceptive, and completely apathetic to human life. He hides the truth in an oracle specifically to destroy man.
Right.
But Yahweh's power in Job is intensely creative, sustaining, and deeply involved.
Unpack that. How is the whirlwind creative? It sounds destructive.
When God points to the foundations of the earth, to the stars, to the Leviathan, he is not just bullying Job with his size.
What is he doing then?
He is saying, Job, look at my creation. I am complex enough to architect the entire cosmos. I designed the weather systems, the animal kingdom, the delicate balance of the universe.
Okay.
If my physical design is this incredibly intricate and purposeful, you must trust that the moral architecture of your life, even this inexplicable suffering, is held within a fiercely purposeful design.
Oh, wow, I see.
He doesn't give Job an itemized list of reasons. He gives Job his presence and points to his purposeful character.
So the Greek worldview says, you suffer because the gods don't care and fate is blind.
Yes.
But the Job worldview says, you suffer, the pain is agonizingly real, but it is not blind. It is held within a sovereign, purposeful design that is way too massive for your human brain to comprehend, but it is anchored in the goodness of a creator.
Exactly. Job's late learning doesn't end with him falling on his sword or burning on a pyre, cursing the heavens.
No.
It ends with him encountering the living God and saying, "My ears had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. Therefore I despise myself and repent in dust and ashes."
He finds peace not because he gets an explanation, but because he encounters the architect.
He is restored under a good creator's sovereign permission, not crushed by chaotic fate.
And that reframing applies to the heroes too. Look at Samson.
Oh, Samson is the perfect parallel.
If Heracles is the Greek archetype of the flawed, invincible strongman, Samson is the absolute biblical equivalent. The parallels are almost eerie.
They are striking. Samson is a Nazarite, divinely gifted by God's Spirit with superhuman strength.
He tears a lion apart with his bare hands, just like Heracles.
He defeats an entire Philistine army with the jawbone of a donkey. He rips the massive city gates of Gaza right off their hinges and carries them up a hill.
He is a walking weapon of mass destruction.
He really is. But just like Heracles, his internal world is a complete disaster.
Right. He is entirely driven by his passions. He lacks sophrisson.
Completely. He repeatedly compromises his divine calling because he cannot control his eros, his lust.
And ultimately, it is a woman, Delilah, who extracts his secret and brings about his downfall.
Exactly. He is blinded, bound, and humiliated by his enemies.
The physical blindness of Samson in the Philistine prison completely mirrors the spiritual blindness of Heracles putting on the poisoned robe.
Both men are architects of their own destruction through their absolute inability to master their desires.
But again, here comes the massive worldview shift. Trachiniae ends with nothing but Zeus, a hollow, meaningless death. But Samson's story doesn't end with him just grinding grain in a prison and cursing the day he was born.
No, Samson's fatal flaws, his tragic blindness, and his ultimate death are actually woven into a covenantal plan.
A plan to save Israel.
Yes. Even in his utter failure, when he cries out to God one last time in the temple of Dagon, God answers him.
God uses Samson's final tragic act to execute judgment on the Philistines and begin the deliverance of Israel.
His failure does not derail God's redemptive purpose.
Yeah.
Miraculously, God works through the brokenness to achieve the rescue.
So let me ask you, the listener, a very direct question.
Yeah, think about this.
When your life falls apart, whether it is because of a terrible, cascading series of mistakes you made, like Samson, or whether it just comes out of nowhere like a storm and shatters your reality, like Job.
Which happens to all of us.
Exactly. Which universe do you actually want to live in? Do you want to live in the Greek universe where a distant, apathetic Zeus is playing a cruel joke with a poisoned robe and your pain means absolutely nothing?
Or do you want to live in the biblical universe where even in the absolute pitch black dark, God is working out a redemptive, purposeful design? The Old Testament basically looks at the Greek stage and says, you are right about the human condition.
Right, it agrees on the diagnosis.
It says, you are right that humans are frail, our knowledge is terrifyingly limited, and our passions are incredibly dangerous. It doesn't sugarcoat the agony of living in a fallen world.
Not at all.
But it insists that suffering is not the final word. It replaces blind, arbitrary fate with a sovereign, purposeful God.
And that Old Testament framework really sets the stage for the ultimate answer. Because knowing God has a purpose is one thing, but we still need a rescue operation.
We need a savior.
We need someone to deal with the poison. And that is where the New Testament provides the ultimate resolution to the tragedy of Trachiniae.
Yes. The New Testament gives us the true and better hero in the person of Jesus Christ.
If we look at the New Testament through the stark, desperate lens of this Greek tragedy, the unique glory of Christ comes into blinding focus.
It's an incredible contrast.
Let's contrast the heroes, because Heracles is the pagan ideal of salvation. He solves the world's problems through brute force and violence.
He achieves his divinity by accumulating physical victories.
But internally, he is cold, he is unfaithful, and he murders innocent people when he throws a tantrum.
Right. And then you look at Jesus.
The writer of Hebrews describes Jesus as the faithful high priest who, in every respect, has been tempted as we are, yet without sin.
He possesses ultimate cosmic power. He calms storms with a word, he raises the dead, but he wields that power with ultimate self-control, perfect sophrosyne, and sacrificial love.
He doesn't conquer by killing his enemies.
No, he conquers by dying for them.
And this brings us to the most profound mechanical parallel in our deep dive today, the imagery of the robe.
The poisoned garment.
Right. I want to replace a bad metaphor I had in my head earlier. I was thinking of the gospel as a hammer that shatters the mirror of Greek tragedy. But that's too vague.
Is not precise enough.
No, it's more like a medical procedure. It's an antidote. Let's look at the mechanics of the atonement through the lens of this poisoned garment.
It is a devastatingly precise comparison. Think about Heracles. He puts on the poisoned robe entirely unwittingly.
He is completely tricked.
And when the venom activates, when the agonizing suffering hits him, what is his reaction?
Pure, violent rage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He curses his wife. He curses his fate. He violently murders the innocent servant Leachus by throwing him off a cliff, and he demands a fire to burn himself alive.
He wants to drag the whole world down into his agony.
He absorbs the poison, and it turns him into a monster.
Now look at Jesus on the cross. Jesus does not put on the poisoned robe by accident.
He is not tricked by a deceptive oracle.
No. He goes to the cross with full divine foreknowledge. He willingly takes on the poisoned robe of human sin.
In theological terms, this is penal substitutionary atonement.
He deliberately steps into the toxic, burning consequences of our rebellion, our errors, our late learning.
He wears the garment of our guilt. He suffers completely innocently, bearing a weight of cosmic brokenness that would vaporize a normal human.
But how does he respond to the agony?
Not with curses, not with violence.
Even as the poison of human sin is killing him, he looks at the people mocking him and says, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do."
It's beautiful. He absorbs the poison, and instead of radiating violence, he radiates grace.
He short-circuits the tragic loop, and because of that, the entire concept of late learning is dismantled.
The Greek characters learn too late, and they are annihilated. Their late learning is lethal.
But for the Christian, the New Testament offers a radically different paradigm. Think of the promise in Romans 8:28.
And we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose.
That verse isn't just a greeting card platitude. When you read it against the backdrop of Trachiniae, it is a lifeline.
It changes everything. It means that for the believer, even our worst moments of late learning, our mistakes, our unwitting errors, the collateral damage of our sins, and the deep unfair sufferings inflicted upon us are caught in a net of sovereign grace.
They are not caught in a net of furies or cruel fate.
Right. Christ steps into our tragedy, puts on our poisoned garment, and dies the death we deserved. But he doesn't stay on the pyre.
He rises.
He rises, turning the instrument of torture into the doorway of resurrection life.
It is incredible how exploring an ancient pagan play can frame the beauty of the gospel with such intense clarity.
The darkness of the myth really makes the light of the gospel so much sharper.
And what's fascinating is that we are not the first people to realize this. This isn't just a neat literary trick we came up with today in this deep dive.
No, the earliest Christians, the early church fathers, they actively used these exact Greek myths to teach theology and equip their congregations.
They did. And we have to remember the historical context of the early church fathers. They lived in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th centuries.
Right, they weren't living in a post-Christian society.
No, they were living in a pre-Christian, deeply pagan world.
The temples to Heracles were still operating. The festivals were still happening. These myths were the dominant cultural language.
And they couldn't just ignore them.
They couldn't.
But I have to ask, isn't it dangerous to mix pagan myths with Christianity? Why didn't the church fathers just tell their congregations to completely avoid these stories, to burn the plays and only read the Psalms?
Well, some did take a very hard line, absolutely. But many of the greatest minds of the early church recognized that these stories contained deep, unfulfilled human longings.
Okay, give me an example.
Take Justin Martyr, writing in the 2nd century. He was a trained philosopher who converted to Christianity. He looked at the surrounding pagan culture, at the stories of the sons of Zeus like Heracles, who performed great labors, suffered, and supposedly ascended to heaven.
And what did Justin do with that? Did he just say, oh, Heracles is basically Jesus?
No. He was very firm. He argued that these pagan myths were demonic counterfeits.
Counterfeits?
Yes. He believed spiritual forces had planted these stories to confuse people before Christ arrived. But, and this is the genius of his approach, he used them polemically to build a bridge.
How so?
He essentially told the pagans, you already have a category in your mind for a divine son who suffers to save people. You know the shape of the story. Your heart is longing for this narrative.
But your hero is broken.
Exactly. Your hero is a violent, lustful counterfeit. Let me introduce you to the true reality that your myth is dimly mimicking. Let me introduce you to Christ.
He used their own cultural operating system to install the gospel. That is brilliant.
It really is.
And then you have a guy like Clement of Alexandria operating a few decades later in Egypt.
Alexandria was the intellectual capital of the ancient world.
A massive melting pot of Greek philosophy and religion. How did Clement handle the Heracles myth?
Clement developed a concept heavily reliant on the idea of the logos spermatikos, the seeds of the word.
Seeds of the word.
He believed that God had scattered seeds of divine truth throughout pagan philosophy and literature to prepare the Greek world for the gospel, just as he had given the law to prepare the Jewish world.
So Clement is looking at something like Trachiniae and finding seeds of truth.
Yes. Clement actually used Heracles as a pastoral illustration for his Christian congregation.
Wait, really?
Yeah. He didn't endorse the pagan theology, but he looked at Heracles' physical endurance, his wrestling with lions, his exhausting labors, his refusal to quit in the face of monsters.
And what did he do with that?
He repurposed that imagery. He told his church, look at the fierce dedication and endurance of this Greek hero against physical beasts. That is exactly the level of intensity and endurance you, as a Christian, must have in your spiritual struggle against vice, sin, and temptation.
Wow. He redeemed the metaphor. He took a cultural icon of physical violence and baptized it into a symbol of spiritual endurance.
Exactly.
And then jumping forward to the 5th century, we have Augustine, one of the absolute titans of Christian theology.
Huge figure.
He is writing his masterwork, The City of God, right after the city of Rome has been sacked by the Visigoths in 410 AD. The world is literally falling apart around him. How does he use this myth?
Augustine uses the tragedy of Hercules, which is the Roman name for Heracles, to draw a devastating contrast between two fundamental ways of living, the earthly city and the heavenly city.
It is two cities.
Right. He looks at the agonizing poisoned death of Hercules on the pyre of Mount Oeta. And Augustine says, look at the absolute best the earthly city has to offer.
This is your greatest hero.
Exactly. He conquered the world, but he was conquered by his own lust. And he died screaming in the fire, offering no salvation to anyone.
The ultimate dead end of human achievement.
It is. Augustine contrasted that dark, fatalistic emptiness with the eternal hope, peace, and true salvation found only in the heavenly city secured by Christ.
He used the failure of the pagan hero to prove the necessity of the divine savior.
That was his method, yeah.
Which brings us to the most important part of our deep dive, the application for you, the listener, today.
How do we actually use this?
Right. How do we read a 2,500-year-old play about a poisoned robe and apply it to our lives on a Tuesday morning? Because this operates on multiple levels.
It does, intellectually and theologically. Immersing yourself in something this starkly fatalistic sharpens your gratitude.
It makes you thankful.
Extremely. When you truly grasp what the universe looks like without grace, a cold, terrifying machine where your mistakes are permanent and the gods are cruel, the grace of the gospel becomes unspeakably sweet.
It prevents us from taking Romans 8.28 for granted.
Absolutely.
And there is a profound aspect of spiritual formation here, too. Let's look at Deianira again.
Her tragic mistake.
Watching her make this catastrophic mistake, not out of cartoonish evil, but out of a desperate, possessive desire to be loved and secure, it should foster a deep humility in us.
It absolutely should. It builds a massive capacity for empathy toward people who are trapped in hopeless situations of their own making.
It reminds us of our own fragility.
And it serves as a stark, glaring warning against unchecked jealousy and eros.
The book of Proverbs, chapter 14, verse 30 says, "A tranquil heart gives life to the flesh, but envy makes the bones rot."
Which is incredibly literal in this play.
Right. Deianira's possessive envy literally resulted in rotting flesh. It is a powerful call to cultivate sophrosyne, to submit our passions to the lordship of Christ rather than letting them drive the bus.
Letting your passions drive is a guaranteed crash.
And finally, there is a cultural mission for us. Just like Justin Martyr, Clement, and Augustine, we live in a world saturated with media.
We watch modern tragic stories, gritty superhero movies, and prestige TV dramas that obsess over anti-heroes, moral ambiguity, and fatalism.
Think about shows like Succession or Breaking Bad.
Oh, perfect examples.
They are modern tragedies about people destroying their oikos through unchecked ambition and passion.
That is the exact modern parallel.
Imagine taking the approach of the church fathers to the media you consume today. How often do we watch a brilliantly made, tragic movie, and when the credits roll, we just feel heavy, depressed, and cynical about humanity?
Very often.
What if instead we used it as a launch pad? What if you turned to your friend on the couch and said, this feeling of inevitability, this cycle of brokenness where people can't save themselves, this is exactly why we need a savior.
This director just perfectly diagnosed the disease. Now let's talk about the cure.
Exactly.
It is the model for incredibly wise, confident cultural engagement. We do not have to be afraid of secular art.
We don't have to hide from ancient pagan plays or modern cynical cinema.
No, we can appreciate their honest, unflinching look at human pain, our limitations, and our tragedies, while confidently holding up the light of Scripture.
We can validate the pain and supply the hope.
It's a powerful way to live.
I want to briefly recap the massive journey we've taken today. We started on the dusty, politically charged stage of 5th century Athens.
We felt the grammatical closeness, the suffocating present tense anxiety of Deianira's pain in the oikos.
We recoiled from the stark, cruel fatalism of the Greek gods and the suffocating horror of learning the truth when it's too late.
We looked at the Hebrew scriptures and saw how Yahweh replaces blind fate with purposeful, creative design in the lives of Job and Samson.
And finally, we stepped into the New Testament reality, into the sovereign, redeeming arms of Christ, the true hero who doesn't leave us burning on the pyre.
It has been a journey from the deepest well of human despair to the absolute highest peak of divine hope.
It really has. And I want to leave you, the listener, with a final provocative thought drawn from the deep imagery of our sources today.
Something to think about all week.
Exactly. Something to mull over as you go about your Lent. Think about the imagery of the robe.
The garment.
In Sophocles' world, a robe smeared with blood was the ultimate trap. It brought inescapable agony, literal fire, and death. It was the symbol of human failure, unchecked passion, and divine cruelty.
A symbol of destruction.
But when you flip to the very end of the biblical story, to the book of Revelation, we are told about a very different multitude of people.
We are.
We are told about a vast crowd standing before the throne of God, people who have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb.
The contrast is just breathtaking. Blood that poisons versus blood that purifies.
When you face your own moments of tragic late learning, when the consequences of your actions catch up to you and you realize you have made a mess of things, remember the great mechanical exchange of the gospel.
The true exchange.
Jesus willingly wore the poison, burning garment of our sin, absorbing the fatal wrath, so that you could wear the pure white robe of his righteousness. You are not subject to blind fate. You are not a pawn to distant gods. You are not even defined by your own worst mistakes.
You are held.
You are held securely and eternally by a purposeful, loving God who turns tragedies into resurrections.
A beautiful, enduring truth.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep exploring, keep questioning the media you consume, and keep looking for the light of the gospel in the most unexpected places. We'll catch you next time.